Right, transcription has begun. A very warm welcome, everyone, to this session. I've already covered the usual housekeeping rules, and they are in the chat box. They're on a slide that is currently up. I think we're good on that now, Oliver, if you wouldn't mind taking down the slide, and we are recording. So, hello, I'm Angeli Scher. Oh, I've just got some strange things happening on my computer. My name's Angeli Scher. I'm an epidemiologist based at the University of Oxford. I am also co-chair of the UK Research Staff Association. I am a woman of Indian origin with long dark hair and green eyes. My pronouns are she, her. I'm going to start by sharing just a few slides at the beginning to introduce this session, and then we have a couple of speakers to talk about things from their perspective. So here we go with sharing my slides. Okay, so this session is all about mental health and well-being. If anyone wants to talk to me about any aspect of this session, please contact me on my email address that's on that first slide, and I will put it into the chat box once I've finished speaking as well. As I said, I'm linked to the UK Research Staff Association that's supported by VTI. So the reason for this session, if I can click through. Right. So a bit of research was done on researchers. I know other researchers out there, but what do they want in their life and work? Researchers want to be happy. They want work-life balance. They want to do interesting work. They're often passionate about what they do and it's a vocation, but they're also looking for a permanent position. And I'm sure that some of you will be smiling at some of these bullet points because it's what most people would want. But I think we're all aware of the challenges that researchers face because they are passionate about their work and it's a vocation and they want to do incredibly well. But a lot is demanded of them in many ways. So thanks to Wellcome for doing such a big survey of researchers and research culture workshops. I think the motivation for this session partly comes from that research culture survey. It was horrifying to hear that 34% of researchers have sought professional help for depression or anxiety, and another 19% wanted to seek help. I think it's known in general that in the population, about 1 in 4 people in any year will have some mental health issues. It is far worse for our researcher population. And a quote from one of the researchers, having mental health issues seems to be the norm in this job. And the link is there if anyone wants to read further into mental health and well-being. So the UK RSA committee, seeing some of this evidence, was horrified and said, we must run a session on mental health and well-being and raise this topic to the highest levels that we can. Should you be affected by any topics or issues that we cover in the session, please contact me, but it's just so that you know. If you know of someone or you yourself experience a crisis in emergencies, please do dial 999, contact the emergency services or go to your nearest A&E department. If it's not an emergency but it's still urgent, please ring 111 to get professional help and advice, and that's 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and make an appointment with your GP. It's to say there's many different sources of help beyond this as well. I'm only giving you 3 here on this slide. The first is Samaritans, and it's a free phone number 24/7 116 123, or you can email them or you can go to their website. And you know what, if you don't get the right voice on the phone for the first time, keep trying. Please call back. They themselves know that sometimes it's just the right voice that people connect with. And then there's Sane Line as well with a number there, and Mind have an info line as well. What's slightly different with them is there are phone numbers, but Mind, you can text them as well. So there's a number of different ways of accessing support, and I think each region in the UK has its own local support services as well. But as I said at the beginning, if anything affects you in the session, please do contact me. I will stop sharing now and describe how this session is going to run. So first up, we have Taya Goku, who is a researcher, a humanities researcher at Oxford, and she's going to describe her story to you. I was privileged to be her coach She accessed coaching support, a free service at Oxford, and she's got a very interesting journey. And we're very privileged because she's going to be sharing some very personal things with you about her own story. I will then come in and talk about my side of it as being a coach and also being a mental health first aider supporting researchers across the UK. After that, we have Jenna Kenyani from Liverpool, who will describe some of the initiatives being done at the institutional level at Liverpool. And then we will have a Q&A session at the end. Any questions, any comments, please put them in the chat box and we will come to them afterwards. So if it's all right with you, we're also privileged with Taya because she's calling in from Italy. And occasionally her screen might freeze, but we have been able to hear everything that she's been saying. So over to you, Taya. Please tell us more about your story.
Thank you, Angeli. Can you hear me fine? Yes, wonderful. Thank you. I'm so pleased to be here with you. As you said, I had quite a journey with coaching. It really helped me. So I would like to share some details of my story, and I really hope to encourage anybody who would find himself or herself in distress to seek out for help. I will try to be short, but I do have to start from the beginning. So let's start from when I got my position in Oxford, which is not that long ago. I remember when I got the position in Oxford very well. I was proud, I was excited. I studied in very small universities in Italy. I didn't study at the University of Rome or the University of Paris. So receiving the news that I was going to work at the University of Oxford came with a lot of excitement, but also with a lot of pressure, of course, because I really wanted to make the most out of this opportunity I had been given. Back then, I think it's an important detail. I was navigating a pretty nasty situation with my PhD supervisor. So let's say that I was very keen on just moving to Oxford and then start a new chapter of my life. And of course, my eagerness to start something new and the university's reputation really just increased the pressure for making the most out of the opportunity. I have to say, I worked in 4 different countries before, so I have quite an experience relocating. But this time was harder, and probably, and I think this is common to many researchers, it was harder because I had to leave the home that I built together with my partner. I had to leave my partner behind, and basically I just arrived in Oxford all by myself. Of course, it was not the best of time to get to Oxford. I got to Oxford in November 2020, right on the verge of the second wave of infections of COVID. And of course, the pandemic didn't help to settle down. I couldn't meet new people. I couldn't take up new hobbies. I basically could do nothing but just walking in the rain alone in the cold English fall. So it was not optimal. And yet probably walking alone in the rain was what I found the best. I definitely prefer that compared to attending yet another online event. That was really, they were really too many back then. The lockdown impacted my life personally, but also professionally, because of the lockdown, a lot of disruption was going on with my work as well. Most of the people were working remotely, so I didn't have enough support to actually settle in properly at work. And also my project was based highly on external collaboration that, of course, were all cancelled due to social restriction. So very soon after I moved to Oxford, the initial excitement left space to anger, loneliness, homesickness, and also recurring anxious thoughts that were increasing at every payday. Like I was running out of time and I was not really making the most of the opportunity I had. So at some point around January, I think, 2021, my stress jet really overflew. And that happened after spending Christmas alone in Oxford because I had been stuck in the UK. I couldn't go back home to my parents. Also, my my heating broke down on 31st of December, left me in the cold. A nice girl so basically offered me help and hosted me for a few days. And this is how I ended up having COVID, because she gave it to me, the poor, nice soul who actually hosted me. So this is just to say that I was at a moment in my life in which things were really start to feel basically surreal. I felt like in a Dali painting, like these cannot possibly be happening. And when I was basically at this point, I just realized that I was not going to deal with all these alone anymore. I didn't want to do it anymore. And this is when I finally knocked to Angeli's door, and how I started my my path with coaching. It was not the only pathway coaching I had with Angeli, because I found it so useful that then I went on going through further coaching and further therapy. The main reason why coaching helped, I think, it's because when you are in such a situation, it can really feel like a balm for your soul to have somebody that sits with you and is just ready to help you help yourself, because this is really what coaching was for me. And Angeli was just there at every session, recapping what happened in the previous episode of the story, and just really trying to give me the tools, or to point me towards the tools to actually make it through this very, very challenging period. And therapy also taught me that just slow down and take a moment to just think about your happiness instead of constantly having to be productive is good, is actually very good. And we should all do it. And it should be seen as a duty from our side also to take care of our mental well-being, I believe. So after recovering for a while, I managed kind of to turn the situation upside down. I managed to find the strength, the time, and the motivation to write down some grant proposal. I ended up winning a grant. I ended up moving back to Oxford after a period outside of Oxford in which I just took some rest. And finally, my partner was able to join me as well. So now, after basically a year and a year and a half, I can say I feel much better. I regained the motivation to do my job that at some point I really lost, which is absolutely awful, because I think we all do what we do out of passion. And I just moved to a new beautiful home with my partner. So I am very happy, but really coaching, I can't stress this enough, was absolutely crucial, paramount to get me where I am right now. So this is my story.
Thank you so much, Taya, for giving us such a personal insight into your journey. And I'm sure many researchers out there would empathize with what you went through. To just, give a little bit of Taya's story from my side. When I first met her, she only had a 1-year contract, and she was trying to get a whole project done in that first year. So, the first thing was, let's step back and reassess expectations and what are we trying to achieve, what's realistic as well. But at the end of the first session, I said, right, what's the priority? And suddenly it came out, which was, I'm not comfortable living in this place. Actually, the priority, the first thing I need to do is find a safe, comforting, good place to live. And it wasn't quite what I expected, but I think what was great about Taya was I held the space for her, but she's so proactive, and she did way more than I thought she might do, and what might be possible. But once she'd sorted out some baseline things and went a little easier on herself, gave herself a bit of nurturing time, she then found the capacity to apply for jobs, apply for grants, and also scope out networks and possibilities within Oxford. It's really amazing. It brought tears to my eyes when I met her just a few months ago. She said, I have a 4-year fellowship and I'm staying in Oxford, and my partner's moving here. They were talking about living in China and Germany and all over the place, and it's all coming together. So it's such an amazing journey, and all power to you, Taya. I might have held the space for you to talk, but the one thing I say to researchers is that you need to be proactive, and Taya did it. She did it, and it was amazing. To just tell a little bit about my side of my journey to being a coach and a mental health first aider, and there's parallels in that journey. I should say first off is that my parents are GPs, so and they are time pressured, so they're used to hearing a little bit, you know, maybe in a 10-minute session, and then they give their advice. They're straight in there with, okay, do this, do that, and then, you know, things will be better. And what I love about coaching, and it was when I stepped into being a part-time researcher developer, my boss said to me, this is the first step, you know, train as a coach and see how you find it. What I love about coaching is you give people an hour. The main thing you do is you listen. Occasionally you'll ask questions, but you regard the other person as the expert on their life. And you trust them that they will come up with the right solutions for their life as well. What you do is ask structured questions, you talk through options, you really hold the space for them to take some time out and assess what's going on in their life at that moment. And I think Tara and I had maybe 4 sessions of about an hour. And it was striking, just her journey and her blossoming and flourishing by the end of that journey and taking it further forward. She recognized that she needed more support, therapy, whatever else needed to come into play to now flourish and have this 4-year fellowship that I'm sure many people would, aspire to. And then after that, my research department offered training to become a mental health first aider. And I did that. It was 2 days training with a local charity called Restore, and it was absolutely terrific. I used to be a St John Ambulance first aider, and many of you will know the acronym Dr. ABC. So check for danger, yourself, response, airway, breathing, compressions. It's an acronym. Similarly, in mental health, there's an acronym as well, which I'll come to in a moment. But some of the parallels with coaching, as well as being a mental health first aider, is listening, is being non-judgmental, it's being there and being supportive, and talking through options. It's not telling someone what to do, and it's not your role to diagnose, it's not your role to be a therapist or to give any kind of therapeutic advice. It's just to be there and to listen and to find out what is going on with someone if they're not themselves. And we've been through this very difficult pandemic period, where we have to assess what's normal for someone across Teams, across Zoom. Now that we are going back, you know, I think it's really important that line managers are there, get to know their new staff, get to know what's normal, get to identify what stresses people out. And everyone's different. Everyone has a different size stress bucket and different ways of releasing stress. And we need to emphasize, I commonly in my coaching emphasize, hey, you're allowed to have a life. You're allowed to pat yourself on the back. You're allowed to self-nurture. Please do this, because if you do something that's a little bit, might regard it as selfish, even though it's not selfish, it's self-nurturing, you'll reap so many rewards. You'll be more productive. You know, your thinking will be clearer. So I'm just going to present a couple of slides about mental health first aiding, which I'll share just now, and I won't be long. Here we go. So I'd highly recommend, you know, in the Concord Act, we as researchers are encouraged to look after ourselves, but also to look after each other in our groups. So I'd really recommend, if the opportunity comes along from your departments and institutions, please do. There's different courses at different levels of mental health training. If you do the first aid training, you know, you get to talk about mental health in general, but then certain conditions. The most prevalent ones are depression and anxiety, and we all have different strategies of coping with stress. Mine personally is turning to sugar and chocolate and cake. Other people, it might be alcohol. You know, we all have different behaviours and ways of coping with stress, and it's identifying the signs and symptoms. I'll talk about Algae in a moment, which is the steps to follow if you think someone needs some help. Like I say, listen non-judgmentally, have supportive conversations, and signpost people further. You're not there to treat, you're not there to diagnose. Signpost them forward to options. And if there aren't options at your institution, start having those conversations about what's on offer. So very briefly, the acronym ALGAE or algae, and they don't have to go in a certain order, but it's just to say, feel free to approach the person, find out what's going on. If you don't feel comfortable approaching this person, then maybe talk to someone else who would feel comfortable approaching them, someone close to them. Listen, communicate non-judgmentally, give support and information and offer them the choice. Encourage them to get professional help, but also other support as well from family and friends. See what's going on with them, and quite frequently they will come up with their own options, and they might be very scared as well. Just being there, just listening non-judgmentally can do the world of good, either as a coach or as a mental health first aider. But like I say, you don't have to do it. If you don't feel it's right for you with that person, but you are concerned, please do approach someone else and voice your concerns. I remember when I was supervising a PhD student and I was concerned I'd not heard from him in a while. I wasn't sure what to do. I was the junior supervisor. I spoke to the senior supervisor and we initiated something in a very compassionate way, and just reaching out helped. So that's my side of the story, and I really wish that institutions and funders create more training opportunities to become coaches and mental health first aiders. I think it's vitally important to help us look after ourselves, but also to help and be good citizens to other people in our teams. So that's enough from me for now. I will now introduce Jenna, who's going to talk about the institutional perspective from Liverpool. Over to you.
Thanks. And I think what I'm about to talk in really feeds into what you guys have just been talking about. So it's been really lovely to hear your stories. Personally, because I'm actually just training as a coach myself at the moment. So I'm really glad to hear that it's made such a difference to your life and you as a coach as well. So that's been lovely to hear. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what we're doing at Liverpool University. I'm just going to try and share my screen, so bear with me. Right, great. So just before I get started, I do apologise. I am full of cold, so if I need to mute my mic to cough, please just bear with me. I've got a bit of a sinus infection. But I'm going to power through and try and make this pretty quick, but I think this will be of real interest. So I wanted to talk today about the Wellbeing Ambassador Scheme that we have been developing within the Faculty of Health and Life Sciences at the University of Liverpool, and it's now been kind of hopefully rolled out across the university as well. So now this scheme originally was developed for our PGR students, but it's worked so well, and we're really proud of it that we're now looking to kind of pilot this with our staff as well. But first of all, I kind of just want to talk a little bit about the work that we've done with our PGR students to kind of really sort of get you to understand what the scheme is. So in 2018, the university was awarded a grant from the Office of Students Catalyst Fund to support wellbeing of PGR students. And after doing some sort of initial kind of focus groups and questionnaires, we identified like 4 key areas we wanted to work on. The PGR journey as a whole, starting from the induction process right to the end. So that was obviously making sure that we were really embedding that understanding about mental health and well-being right from the moment that our students kind of came and started their PhD journey. So that also helped break down the barriers. You know, we talked, I've heard today a lot about those feelings of kind of sort of being able to open up and ask for help. And that's what we wanted to kind of break down some of those barriers. And also work with other areas of the university to develop support and give the students sort of an understanding of what a PhD journey was, so they could kind of start to develop an understanding of how to look after their well-being right from the beginning. We also looked at our supervisors and how we could support them. So we actually went on to develop an online training module for supervisors that were designed by some of our students as well, or with input with them anyway. And this is about understanding mental health, what supervisors can do to support their students if they start to present with mental health sort of issues, but also how to look out for those signs. And we're actually hoping to make that compulsory within our faculty so that all PIs have that knowledge to be able to support their students. We also looked at the role of non-supervisory staff in supporting our PGRs, and we took part in a survey that was developed by for looking at sort of technicians' role, in supporting PGRs, and this was in conjunction with the Science Council and the Royal Society of Biology and Institute of Physics. And from that, we've developed more training and documentation. But the main thing that I wanted to talk to you today about was our peer ambassador scheme. So we developed a scheme to have sort of this peer-to-peer support. We've heard quite a lot today about mental health first aid training and how crucial that is and how important it is. Well, we actually gave this to our PhD students that kind of were appointed as peer ambassadors. So first of all, we started off in one institute within our faculty, and we had 5 PGR students from different years of their PGR studies. We offered a £500 personal award for taking part and taking on this role, and we expected a certain level of engagement in taking on this role. So we asked them to take roughly about 8 hours a month towards this role, and that was in one-to-one support, in meetings and in training, and as well as running events. So like I said, they did have mental health first aid training, but they also had a lot of other bespoke training as well to kind of really empower them to be able to have those conversations with other students and provide that peer-to-peer support that was needed. Within the first 2 months, we had 17 direct approaches, and this really kind of showed the importance of having a program like this, allowing the students to have someone to go to. They might not necessarily want to go straight to a staff member or don't feel comfortable going, but they did want to go to someone that was like them, that they could speak to, but they had all of the skills and training to be able to kind of provide the support they needed. So like I said, this has been running since 2018, and we've continued to expand this scheme and grow, which has been really exciting. We've had a few wobbles along the way. So in our second year, we expanded it into 3 institutes across the faculty and also across the university. We went into another faculty. It continued with the one-to-one support, and we actually got the ambassadors to help in the induction process as well, which we found really important. They continued to run wellbeing activities, and we really started to see a greater uptake in these. And we even ran our first university-wide event. However, COVID struck in March of this cohort's year, and this really kind of affected the scheme quite significantly. Obviously, a lot of our wellbeing activities that were done face-to-face were no longer available, and we had to try and move them online, and the uptake just wasn't the same. As we heard before from T, that everyone had Zoom fatigue. We were kind of exhausted, so our students were as well, so they really weren't engaging. And that one-to-one support we really struggled with as well. So it seemed that the students didn't want to reach out via email or online the same way they used to. So we had to kind of really reinvent how we kind of work the scheme and how we kind of continue to develop the scheme. We did continue to develop it, and we rolled it out for our 3rd year. However, we also had a restructure in our faculty, and the scheme lead moved to university level, and I took over as faculty lead. We now had it across the whole faculty, and we actually brought on postdocs and PS staff to help kind of maintain the scheme. This had pros and cons to this, and we've actually removed those now from the scheme because it was adding an element that was making things difficult, in the sense that the staff weren't supported enough to take on those roles. I'll come to that a bit more later. We've been able to start doing obviously a bit more online in-person activities, but it's really made us think a lot about how we kind of develop our online activities so we get that engagement, because it does help with accessibility and things like that. We ended up having a review of the scheme, and we've gone from having it from October to October, which we considered our kind of PGR sort of year of of study to January, so that we have ambassadors that are fully embedded, fully trained, really stuck into all of their events, that are ready for kind of the new starters. Because what we've found since COVID is, because of this working from home or hybrid working, a lot of our PGRs are telling us that they feel disconnected from their own lab groups, from the rest of their PGR cohort, from people at the university, within the faculty. So we want to make sure that there are events and people that they can go and speak to right from the beginning of their journey, so they don't feel that. So this is just some great pictures of examples of our students getting stuck into their wellbeing events. And we found that these have actually made such a massive difference. I can't remember who said it before, but actually having the time and space to take to look after your well-being has been so important. And having these events and showing that it's okay to take time from your studies and take time from your PhD has made a real impact. It's allowed the students to talk to other students about the journey they're having. Sometimes we have specific seminars, maybe on something that they would find difficult, say the sort of thesis writing section, or the maybe supervisory issues. But what we find is those actual just social events where they can come together and just talk naturally about their journey and find other people that were willing to listen and engage with them and kind of reassure them that it's normal and they're going through something similar, has had the biggest impact. So I mentioned that we did a review, and anyone that might want to think about sort of taking on some of this kind of idea to their own institution, we did find that there were strengths and weaknesses to this. But what I kind of really want to highlight is the kind of the threat section. Now, if you want to sort of take on a scheme like this, there are some really key areas that you need to think about. You do really need that buy-in from PIs. You need them to kind of engage with the scheme, and you need them to sort of support their students to either be ambassadors themselves or to go and take part in those wellbeing initiatives. If they're not given the space and the time, then you're kind of sort of stopping them from looking after their wellbeing. So that's really important. Obviously, thinking about that working from home, hybrid working has been a real challenge, and how we kind of make our scheme as accessible as possible, which also obviously ticks a lot of our EDI initiative projects as well, because we do want it to be accessible, and we don't want it to just be for those people that are on campus and that are able and sort of have the opportunities to come to it. It should be for everyone. One of the biggest issues that we've had is actually the lack of physical and accessible space to hold events in person when we do want to hold them in person. But more than this, one of the things we've really needed to consider is how to sustain the scheme for a long term. We needed manpower, and we're very lucky in our faculty that we've got positions now that kind of really sort of run the scheme. There's my position, but we also have a new staff member that's just started that is similar to a learning support teaching officer, which is you often find more for undergrads, but we now have one for PGR students. And this is a really fantastic link that sits within our PGR admin team, links in with our student services, and is somewhere that the ambassadors can send students if they're really worried about their mental health. You need a budget to help kind of run a scheme like this. And like I said, you need really strong links with student services. But moving forward, we want to do more. We want to support our staff, not only because we need to support our staff, but obviously to support our PhD students. How can we do that if our staff are struggling? You know, we've seen that there's so many reports out there now around higher education and the number of staff that are struggling with their well-being. But this isn't just in higher education, it's across all businesses. We've seen it within our own staff pulse surveys that our staff, feel like they need us to do more to show that we care about their health and well-being. But what was really worrying is things like 1/3 of our staff say that they find it difficult to deal with job-related pressure. So we really need to have sort of different ways for staff to kind of reach out and find support. We can also see from reports that look outside of higher education, but across the business sector, that actually investing in mental health support and supporting your employees actually returns for the business. I think this is a really powerful quote. For every £1 spent, you get a return of £5 in terms of mental health support for employees. So what we want to do is take the scheme we've got and roll this out for staff. So that is recruiting staff members to have this mental health first aid training, which, you know, we've heard so much about today, and we really know how it can have a real impact that has been seen in the living experience that we've had today. So that's where we are at the moment. We're about to run some focus groups and develop this. And I'll finish there, and if there are obviously any questions, then people can ask me about this. But we're really excited about this project.
Thank you so much, Jenna. It's wonderful to hear that at the institutional level, things are happening in such an amazing way with an ambassador scheme and more, and that mental health first aid training is being rolled out. Everyone here, I'm sure you've heard some really interesting things. Please do ask questions. We've got about 5 minutes to go. Since there isn't any questions at the moment, I just want to have a minute to say that, you know, I've been on both sides of this coin. I've had mental health issues, and it was related to my research and so forth. Just be aware that there are still stigmas out there culturally. Like, some people might find it difficult to talk and say that they have mental health issues, even though it's becoming far more normalized now to talk. And we've got this session today which shows that there's change. But also, you know, people can be very fearful about what will happen to my research project if I'm not there doing it. What if I need to take 3 months, 6 months, a year out? What will happen? And I think, you know, again, I would ask the funders to be very understanding and think about, you know, no extensions to project deadlines and things like that. But also, we need to reassure people that it'll be okay if they need to step away. I think it's in one of the Nordic countries, their prime minister, you know, had problems and was allowed to step away for 6 months. And, you know, the world will not end if you need to look after your health. And I think the other thing, you know, little things do count, you know, a text message, a get well soon card, all the kinds of things you do for someone who has lost someone or suffering from cancer. You know, do all of these things for someone who also has, you know, has mental health problems. And also to say that prevention and cure are very similar. I'm sharing my slides again. There's a number of different ways of putting this across. But I think my key message is encourage our researchers, and if you're a researcher yourself, to have more of a life than just your work. This is a slide that shows 5 ways to well-being, which is, you know, connect with others, be active, do something nice for other people, give, volunteer, keep learning, maybe a different language or a different skill, take notice of the little things. And then there's another one called Great Dream, another acronym, 10 keys to happier living, that incorporates a lot of these things, you know, appreciating, giving, having direction, you know, becoming more self-aware about your own emotions and where you are with your own stress levels, etc. So Action for Happiness has produced that one. So the other thing for anyone who is struggling is to give messages of hope, and you will recover, and we're here, and it's okay. Take as much time as you need. You know, it's okay. So yes, Taya, I can't see any questions at the moment. Taya, having heard what me and Jenna have said, do you have anything that you'd like to come back on?
I just would like to stress once again what has been said already. So I think researchers do not understand the importance of taking time off to really sit together with your anxiety, for instance, and just stare at it until you get to know it very well. We don't do it. We don't do it because we have to constantly write a new paper so that we can be competitive, so that we can find a new job, because we're often on a very short contract, and this puts a lot of pressure on us. And I think that we really need to push this idea of you can stop and you must stop. You have the duty to stop and take care of yourself. We should really oblige people to just slow down when they need.
Thank you. I agree. That's fundamental. Look after yourself first, and it's the whole concept of this is a marathon, not a sprint. You know, it becomes embedded in research culture. Must do this, must do that, and I mean, just think about how long it takes to get a paper published. You know, the pressure that's there is of a sprint. You must do this in this hour and that in that hour, but actually, it can take a couple of years, can't it? So yes, thank you to people who are posting resources in the chat. I hope you'll agree this is a very important topic and that there's more that we can do. So Jane posted about education support partnership with a free helpline for staff in higher education. That's excellent. Stephanie, UWS Power Hour. So peer support, even though it's through a writing group, absolutely connect with others. Academia can be lonely. And I think, Taya, you're a humanities researcher. This can be particularly lonely. And sometimes there's financial pressures. Humanities researchers more often are expected to fund their research through teaching. So it's not always, good funding. Also pleased to hear CR UK are offering coaching to their leaders. I think all funders should be doing this for their leaders. The technicians report, again, recognising we're human beings. Right, I think we've got some stuff coming in. Charlie Waller Memorial Trust, lots of work with universities, excellent. Having boundaries, about emails and working hours. Right, Eleanor, here we go. All right, the assumption is that people are struggling, they have to sort it out themselves. What if there's bullying, sexism, nepotism, sexual harassment, etc.? Women Academia Support Network, excellent effort. Yeah, I think there is a lot of onus, and I think, as I said earlier, that as researchers, even little things make a difference. If someone is struggling, just saying, how are you? Or even saying, it seems like you're feeling this, am I right? Checking in with what's going on, or have I just misread the situation? Okay, absolutely, there are systemic problems with research, and I think this does relate to the stat that was up front from Wellcome, that over 50% of researchers want to seek professional help, and a proportion of them do. There is something wrong with research culture inherently. So I agree with that. We had invited a manager to speak, and unfortunately they couldn't make it. But yeah, the shifting research culture from outputs to being people-centered is incredibly important. That's why I think the CR UK scheme about providing coaching to PIs, but also some of them doing this mental health first aid training would be helpful as well. I certainly have experience of a PI who didn't really know what to do. She was a clinician, but she wasn't quite sure how to deal with the situation. So the onus went on to following occupational health advice. But even so, resources at universities have changed over time. Is there a free counselling service? Is there a free telephone helpline? What triage is there? What support is there? Yes, we need more than just to be told, here's how to maintain your own well-being. There is a lot more we can do as a community. And yes, Rachel, wow, we should be monitoring workloads. There are very few people out there in the research scheme who would say, hang on, slow down, take a minute, breathe, take a break, rather than, when's that next paper coming? Or oh, there's a grant application deadline then, do you think we can do it? Taya, do you want to come back on something?
Yes, just really quick, I wanted to say that I think it's amazing to engage the PIs so that they can actually take care and seek out for red flags in the mental health of their students. However, because there is a big generational gap sometimes between the PI and the current researchers, it's difficult for them to relate to the issue a researcher might have. So I think that the idea of peer mentoring, peer coaching, and really just looking out for each other within your group, it's very, very powerful, because we can really understand where other researchers come from. And I think we are the best people to actually just, we navigated the same struggles. So the idea of just bringing us all together, as Jenna was saying before, so that we can just chat about what's going on and what's wrong with us, I think it's very, very powerful, and we should really implement that. I'm not saying the PIs shouldn't be involved, of course, but I think we are the people who can actually turn the whole system upside down in a way.
Yeah, I like that. I think it's grassroots initiative going upwards. And if someone does have mental health problems and has to step away, it becomes very obvious to the whole department, and that sometimes the PI hasn't been following the right track. And I think Taya's right. I think she's answering your question, Eleonora, which is peer support, reaching out to others in the group or beyond in the department, and talking that things are difficult. Jenna, please come in.
I was also going to just follow up and say, obviously PIs themselves have their own mental health issues, and I think it's important that they have their own support network as well. I think sometimes the higher up the hierarchy you get, the harder it is to kind of reach out and ask for help, because the more pressure there is to be everything. There is a lot of pressure, and then I think there is a lot of stigma, and there also may be generational things where for a lot of the more senior leaders like that, they don't feel comfortable with opening up and saying they've got mental health issues, and because they're not owning up and dealing with their own sort of problems, that feeds down into their lab groups and their postdocs, and it constantly is churning this culture. So it's not just about, I'm really conscious of sort of making sure that there is no kind of blame. Yes, there is cultural problems, and unfortunately a lot of that can stem from things that have gone on for a long time, and so we put the blame often at the people at the top, but they haven't had any support either. And I think we need to acknowledge that, and that their bad practices have unfortunately keep filtering down. And if we can sort of maybe help them to realize they need to look after their own mental health and take their own time, to make them, for it easy for them, then maybe that will also help along the way.
I totally agree, Jenna. I think it's very rarely that a PI wants to behave badly or in a stressed way to their team. Often there are other pressures and time pressures. And I think it's happened in my coaching, actually, where people have said, oh, my PI is really stressy and pushing me and this and that. And I say, how do you think they're doing? Do you think they need support? Do you think, saying, how are you doing? This seems like this, starting a dialogue might help. So, even though you're a team member, you can also do your bit for everyone in the team, no matter where they are in the hierarchy. And as I said in the previous session, in a given year, I mean, a year is an arbitrary figure, life is going to happen to everyone. Everyone needs to step away for one reason or another for however long, whether it's family or bereavement or moving house or a divorce or whatever. Life happens. And I think some of the best managers who speak at my workshops, they're aware of this and they accommodate it. And it's like, what one person I'm thinking of, her I think it was her grandfather passed away in a country at the other across the side of the world, and she had to step away. But the culture in her team was, we expect this kind of thing to happen. And the rest of us know the basics to at least hold your study and not let it die. Don't worry, step away, you need to. And I think the whole system can work towards that in terms of funders, as well as institutions, as well as managers, as well as researchers, the 4 groups in the Concordat. If we can all appreciate that life happens and build that into the system, I think Eleanor's right as well. There's such a culture of putting in a grant application that is reasonably funded rather than properly funded, and that speaks towards workload, if that's a core systemic problem, but also building in capacity for someone to step away for a month or two in each team. We should be building that kind of culture. Jenna?
I think also there is an element of training, isn't there, that can help as well. I think sort of that understanding, like, we talked about the mental health first aid training. It's more, sort of, I've learned a lot from that, and I think a lot of people do learn a lot, but our PIs don't necessarily have the training on how to deal with maybe their own pressures, let alone how to deal with the sort of, the stresses of their team. And I think we do need to kind of consider, do we need to be doing more to kind of train our PIs in being effective managers, so that they can manage the kind of pressures and they're not pushing all of what they can't cope with down onto their team.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think that's completely within the Concordat as well as an aim. I am so sorry. I got so into the issue that I forgot that we've run over time and that there's a good practice sharing session that might follow on very nicely to this. So huge thanks to Taya and Jenna for sharing their experiences and work. I'm really sorry, but we have to stop there. And all the best. Thank you, and see you at the next session. Thanks for being with us. Bye.